Hello, everyone. This is Alpha Omega. It's May 2nd. Today, I want to talk a bit about PLUGPOWER. The material I'll be discussing today is from their quarterly report, which they released on March 4th. I've summarized the main points from that report. First, let's look at what their main strategy is for 2025. When asked about this, CEO Andy Marsh came out and said the following. He said, "In March, we announced something called Project Quantum Leap. So, what is this about? It's an additional cost-cutting project. So, they said they expect to save about $150 to $200 million a year through this. The reason they're talking about this, of course, is because they don't have enough money. So, where exactly are they planning to make these savings? They said they're going to cut staff, consolidate facilities, and limit capital expenditures to save this amount of money. So, if you look at it now, what's the top priority for 2025? They said it's cost control and revenue growth, so keep that in mind. Currently, they're producing green hydrogen in the US, specifically in Georgia, Tennessee, and Louisiana. As for Texas, funding from the Department of Energy is still pending and in progress, so production hasn't started there yet, just something to keep in mind. So right now, the hydrogen production infrastructure is in Georgia, Tennessee, and Louisiana. Also, just so you know, they're producing hydrogen in Louisiana through a joint venture with Air Liquide. And in Texas, they received approval for a $166 million loan from the U.S. Department of Energy in January, and they said construction is scheduled to begin in the second half of 2025. So, we can probably expect to see news about the start of construction in Texas in the next or the following quarterly report. It might be good to wait and see what happens with that. They said that completing this would take up to 24 months, about 2 years. Next, they also mentioned that in Spain, they are currently working on a refinery project with a capacity of 25 megawatts. In addition, they are building the first hydrogen-based logistics hub in Spain. What is this? A hydrogen-based logistics hub? They're talking about GenDrive. If you look here, this is about logistics, probably making fuel cells and using them for this purpose. They're currently manufacturing fuel cells, building charging stations, and providing services, and, well, that's how they're making money. It looks like they're saying this is going to be introduced in Spain for the first time. So, they said that after 2025, they're going to focus on 3 key areas. As I just mentioned, logistics and material handling, this is where they're planning to focus their business. The second area is electrolyzers. And the third, if you scroll down a bit, is hydrogen production. But they said this hydrogen will be produced specifically for logistics support. So, the first thing I mentioned, sorry for jumping back and forth like this. They said that the key will be the operating rate of the logistics factories. So, if companies actively run their warehouses, they'll use more GenDrive units and consume more hydrogen, but this all depends entirely on each company's current situation. Next, the second part is electrolyzers. Electrolyzers are where you can make the most money. So, at Plug, they're saying that global demand for electrolyzers is currently extremely strong. So, right now, GE and LP are working on this project. And they mentioned that they are currently carrying out large-scale projects like this 100 megawatt project. And besides this, for Portugal project, there's also Australia. Originally, they were already working on it, but they were waiting for the FRD. But what happened to them now? It got cancelled. It was cancelled, but instead, they secured another new hydrogen project in Australia. However, as you can see, the final investment decision for this one is also scheduled for a quarter in 2025, so it's not a sure thing yet, and we'll have to wait and see. So, I think we'll have to wait a bit when it comes to Australia. Now, as for Portugal, what I just mentioned is shown here, and it's a refinery project in Europe. They're saying they'll replace grey hydrogen with green hydrogen and then extract oil. There are several large-scale projects like this. You might want to keep that in mind as a reference. Okay, so despite that, they're saying that sales were down a little bit in the quarter. So what was the reason for the sales These guys just had sales of $191 million in the fourth quarter. They closed out 2024 with a total of $629 million in sales. But what were the factors that affected fourth quarter sales? When asked that, they said it was the logistics sector. In other words, the Gen Drive side. Here, a customer caused a delay, so about $8 million worth was postponed. It didn't happen, in other words. Next, they weren't able to deliver mobile refueler products to the Class 8 truck customer. This was entirely because PLUGPOWER didn't have enough money, resulting in a loss of $16 million. And the production of the cryogenic product line was also delayed. So, 12 million couriers that are focused on the latest schedule are now being followed up by couriers who purchased the Mediterraneanisl. Now, as was mentioned, however, in order to implement this for two people's companies, $1 million is needed. The reason why GoPro couldn't bring all generations was due to customer installation delays and lack of site preparation, resulting in a sales loss worth $68 million. And to try to make up for it, the schedule has been delayed to around the second or third quarter of 2025. So, they said that they could have earned a total of $120 million more, but they weren't able to, and that the revenue closed at $191 million. I was about to say this out loud. That's the situation right now. At this time, we are building a system to supply power to the batteries in order to create synergy. So, as you can see, this time, they reported $190 million, but for the next quarter, they said it would be around $120 to $140 million. So, the market will probably think, it doesn't look like next quarter will be very good either. So, I thought that might be why the stock price is going down right now. I also summarized some of the questions analysts asked during the PLUGPOWER conference call. For example, Oppenheimer asked, "You're trying to build electrolyzers right now, but do you have any issues with funding?" I just talked about it. So, are you able to secure enough cash flow? In response, they said that they currently have one large-scale project each underway in Europe and North America. For the European project, the final investment decision will be made by the end of the quarter, and for the North American project, they've already signed an offtake agreement. What exactly is an offtake agreement? What that means is, as long as they produce the hydrogen well, there's a customer who has agreed to buy 100% of it right away. So, that's how things are progressing right now, but just keep in mind that they didn't give a clear, definite answer about whether they're actually securing enough cash flow. Alright, next, how is the recovery in the Merloop handling market going? I just talked about it. You guys are going to be making fuel cells and all that, but have there been any signs of the market recovering yet? That's what they asked. So, what did Andy Marsh say in response? He said that one of their clients paid them $200 million up front. He added that they supported an order of $200 million in scale. That's definitely great news. And besides that, BMW has now signed an expanded agreement. And they said, thanks for providing measures to strengthen profitability. And going forward, it seems like collaboration between you guys, PLUGPOWER, and us, BMW, will be easier. So they gave a positive response. So, in terms of logistics, those were the two main answers they provided. It seems like they gave these kinds of examples to show that there are positive signals. I think we can just keep that in mind. Now, next, they ask about the progress of the Department of Energy's loan package. You've talked a lot about loans with the Department of Energy. Up until now, has there been any change? They said that there haven't been any internal personnel changes and that they're continuing to work well with the existing team. They mentioned that things are currently moving forward in Texas. They also said that the Department of Energy process is ongoing. Oh, and they've secured strong political support for the Texas project area. So, what does this mean? Basically, they're hinting that they might be able to get some support from the Department of Energy. It seems like they were speaking metaphorically, and as for the fourth quarter of 2024, actually, it's 2025, they're saying that construction will start in 2025. So, as I mentioned earlier, the construction period is expected to be about 24 months. And when it comes to building the Texas plant, they said that, based on the experience from the Georgia plant, they'll be able to cut down on operating costs a bit while building the Texas plant. Now, are there any outside investors in the Texas project besides the Department of Energy? When asked about this, they said that some specialized infrastructure investment funds have shown interest, and that they are currently in discussions. They also mentioned that there is still global capital looking to invest in new growth industries. So, it would be good to keep in mind that there are potential investors out there. Yes, I think that sums it up. So, to recap, regarding the ammonia project, they're saying that both the large-scale projects in Europe and North America have stable funding. In my opinion, the scale in Europe is much larger right now, probably because they really suffered from their dependence on Russian energy this time. They shut off the oil pipeline. So, it seems like Europe is making major investments to reduce their dependence on Russian energy. I think that's a good way to sum it up. They also mentioned signs of recovery in the logistics business, and gave 2 examples. They also said that investments have resumed and that new contracts are likely to be signed. Next, regarding loans from the Department of Energy, they mentioned that it's possible to maintain the existing terms. In other words, there's a chance they could get them in Texas. But recently, Trump hasn't really been showing strong support for green hydrogen. So, in the clean hydrogen sector, there's some policy uncertainty and there could be negative news in the future, like reduced financial support. So, it doesn't really seem like the US is going to give it a big push. And that's probably having a negative impact on the stock price right now, just something to keep in mind. They also mentioned that there are external investors. They said they're going to improve their cost structure. So that's about what Plug Power had to say, but since April 16th, the stock price has dropped below $1. So the stock price is going down right now. Actually, never mind. Anyway, let's move on from that. The fact that it's dropped below $1 since April 16th is really bad, and, as you probably know, if it stays below $1 for more than 30 days, Nasdaq will issue another warning. And then, if they get another 180 days after that, if the company receives a warning, they usually try to raise the stock price by doing things like a reverse stock split. Anyway, we don't know if Plug Power will soon go above 85 cents and recover back to $1, but honestly, no one can predict things like this, right? So, I personally think that the direction of Plug Power's stock price depends entirely on what kind of news they release or what contracts they secure. So, to sum up, this is about where Plug Power stands right now. If any of you have questions or if anyone wants to add further explanations, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a comment. I think that's a good place to wrap up the discussion on Plug Power. I'll be back after preparing a summary of the next company. Have a great day. Thank you.